Basically, the core crux of this video is that parody, satire, and social commentary are some of the most important facets of a healthy and functioning society, and I'm hopefully going to prove to you why. Entertainment has been quite an important element of human culture for pretty much our entire existence. They have found musical instruments dating back as far as 60,000 years, and by Neanderthals. That ain't even us. That's the guys that we absolutely took over and didn't ever breed with at all in any points of our lives. What are the odds we learned music from them? But anyway, we can conclude that with music being a thing, we can kind of assume that there has always been an element of entertainment in our evolution as creatures. But of course, the archives are incomplete and every day it changes. So we'll take that with a very healthy dollop of salt. But we do know at least of one thing that did exist in history as pure contemporary parody and critique, and that is the court jester. Yes, that is right. I am likening people like More Pegasus, WestJet, hell, probably even Sunny V2 and CoffeeZilla and other drama slop creators to court jesters. But not just them, I mean things like Scary Movie, Deadpool to an extent, Carry On franchise, and even Charlie Chaplin had a fair shake at it. But throughout history, there's always been serious forms of, well, media and entertainment. And there's always been light-hearted forms of entertainment too. And there was the parody. The serious forms were normally what people tried to associate with that time period. For example, if you look back at like the 50s, 60s, 70s, you'll see a lot of TV shows that highlight like the American dream, suburban life as kind of like the peak of civilization, and in the case of America at least, American exceptionalism. Even romances were heavily idealized on screen, but pretty much every man back then was yeah. In fact, half the time, you can kind of assume when someone thinks that they were born in the wrong era is because they spent half their life watching or reading about idealized versions of that time period and not at all seeing what the actual time period was like.
Wow, you grew up in the 80s.
No, I grew up in the 80s.
If you go back to look at the parodies of these time periods, though, they will be awash with housewives all on drugs, kind of like double entendre, men beating their wives, and also like the ever-present threat of communism. I mean, you don't even have to go that far back. Fight Club, Starship Troopers, both were critiques of 90s America, where one was about a lack of meaning in society, where everything is consumer focused, and all you do is sit in a cubicle all day and buy shit. So naturally, at that point, you have so much rage that you just want to go fuck shit up, essentially. And on the other hand, is about fighting aliens in borderline uniforms that reminiscent of 1940s, mostly to parody the US military-industrial complex and also military interventionism, but also to parody how we just love fighting illegal aliens, especially when they drink your brain through a straw. I mean, you just go back to the 1900s and women were getting induced orgasms to cure hysteria. And I am rather shook that that wasn't parodied. To be honest, that might be a little bit too low-hanging. But what I'm saying is that sometimes media has a tendency to portray current political, social, and economic landscapes in ideas or ways that are idealized or kind of propagandized, choosing to highlight more of the traits that they want you to see rather than actually the seedier elements that also happened in that time period. There are, of course, like lots of serious movies that do function as social commentary, but generally if you want to see the truth of a specific era, don't look about what they write about, look at what they joke about.
Would you like a little whiskey, man?
Certainly not.
Pretty much every single culture has functioned like that, and in the case of the jester, by using humor as a means of parodying the current monarch, they were able to say things about the current regime that would get other people hanged or without a head. Humor created the catalyst to be able to say things that otherwise could not be said, and the elite would seem self-aware enough by looking at the joke and having a laugh at their expense that they look a little bit more approachable to the average person, and they come across as a little bit less bad. It's just a reasonably low stakes to get a message across as well, except for in the case of Charles I. I know what you're thinking, what the fuck does that have to do with streamers and slop creators in general? Well, in media, there will always be a fourth wall break or a character that just doesn't take it too seriously because it's a story, it's fiction, it's not real. And this is where our jesters and the jesters of old come in. Streamers and content creators do not have media to rein them in, and in some cases mainstream media can even place them relentlessly because the content that is being created is not fiction. kind of is, but it's also their lives for the most part. Yes, they are playing a character, and most of them are portraying a character, but it's not like entertainment like a movie or a TV show is, and these people essentially become kings of personalities to thousands and sometimes millions of people who will simper for them. Simper means like to smile ingratiatingly as a means of like currying favor or being harmless. It's a way of getting into other people's good side. A simperer is someone who does that. Wait a minute. But anyway, streamers have essentially become kings of simps, and a lot of their following will take everything that they say at face value and smile ingratiatingly when they do some real shady shit. And we see a lot of people talk about things like the grift and how everything is a grift these days. Shit, even this video itself is a sort of grift. Even drama content is a grift as well. Realistically, a grift is just using certain elements that your target audience deems appropriate or desirable as a means of keeping them engaged with your content or messaging long enough to then be able to exploit the hell out of them later without them realizing what you're doing. And that's been like well documented, you know, Andrew Tate using the red pill movement to reach disenfranchised young men and then exploit them by selling completely garbage courses and allegedly doing crypto scams. Anyway, Andrew Tate is like beating a dead horse as it is right now. But I do have to be like a little bit balanced. And Pokimane and Hassan, for example, will throw out leftist talking points to try and reach that demographic and then say things like eat the rich and then do literally everything possible to accumulate more wealth at the expense of their viewers.
Thanks.
And we hate the rich. Anyway, too much. Aren't you the rich?
But realistically, it doesn't actually matter what aisle you're on. So long as there is a financial incentive, people will use talking points to win you over, even when they don't actually believe it themselves. Even the drama slop YouTube creators will use specific talking points because they know that's what people come to see. But at least they are kind of self-aware enough to know that what they're doing is just a bit and not to be taken too seriously. Like, except for maybe someone like Sunny V2, like... But he's more like your highbrow slop content. It's like the content that's trying to be all proper and high quality about people like Jack Doherty. You can polish a turd all you want, but it's just gonna smear. Look, I'm not here to debate politics. I'm just trying to point out that these people have built kingdoms in a way that needs a jester to keep them in check and keep them honest. The drama YouTubers provide the out-group perspective, outside of two people who are fighting each other. You know, take like Hassan and Asmongold, like the most one-sided fight in history. But what I'm saying is like two sides of the people, they're having a fight amongst each other. But then there's also the other outgroup that do not want to be a part of these individual spheres of people. They want to be somewhere else. And that's what the drama slop YouTube creators provide. At least in this particular case, the outgroup is normally unemployed people. Sorry, I watched too much West Chat. It's my guilty pleasure. When you're in a fandom, you're in a vacuum and you can get wrapped up and caught up in the environment, the atmosphere, everything, and think that it's fucking real for some reason. And the drama YouTuber is the person that walks into the room, smells the air and says, hey guys, it fucking stinks in here. And they are the only ones providing the external reality check to audiences who are otherwise being gaslit by the creators. I feel it deep in my bones, the irony that a drama YouTuber is the only one that is able to police the border between success and exploitation. Here's the thing, and why they are so important as the court jester is that the drama slop YouTuber is the only one who is able to call out somebody as a fraud or a grifter or whatever else without essentially being beheaded by people's fandoms, because no one takes them seriously. They're saying the truth, but no one takes it seriously necessarily, but they still function like a sort of social guillotine because, and especially with some creators, there is an implicit fear that one day you might end up on one of these channels and you yourself might be the butt of the joke. And considering most people who get into this space are normally very egocentric people, yeah, no one wants to be there. So yeah, you do kind of need this thing, especially in today's world. Like, culture has shifted. Well, shifted's a bit, yeah. But anyway, there is now the idea that everyone is for themselves, and go out and get that bag is a very common expression that you see floating around, and it kind of justifies a lot of shit because almost everyone is struggling, especially the unemployed, but that is just another slope for exploitation. And when you have an audience that believes everything that you say and will justify everything that you do, the temptation to start the grift becomes irresistible.
Like, if you're a broke boy, just say so.
Hence crypto scams, trash courses that don't teach you anything new or novel, or even selling heinous cookies that have no business existing. The worst part is that these people will just take a cookie cut product and throw it down your throat in the hopes that you don't give a shit and will just pay for it because it's associated with you. And then they will try and exploit you out of your last penny, trying to say they're giving you value or something. There are, of course, like exceptions to this, but they are rare. And in a world where private equity is going to give us the enshittification of everything, you better believe that in the next few years, every single product that an influencer is going to sell you will have been stripped of all of its value that it probably could have had, and will be as close to unviable as possible so it can maximize profits and minimize quality, completely coasting off the laurels of that creator's reputation, and then subsequently dragging that creator through the mud. And yes, you can absolutely argue with too many slop creators, it loses its luster. Like Al Jokes had an excellent video on that one, where he basically said that we've become so desensitized to extreme content that it's just kind of normal now, and people will just excuse bad behavior.
Just that proving someone is bad in 2025 doesn't have the same effect that it did 10 years ago. It's less of a comment on his content and more of a comment on society.
But that doesn't mean that we should stop, because in a world where nothing matters, at least like the court of public opinion might carry some weight. Look what happened to iDubbbz. But these days it's like less of an immediate social headlopping and more of a grinding them down to dust with consistency, hence why the legendary series will probably hit 365 days uninterrupted. But yes, look, they also need to be kept in check too. There's almost layers of arbitration here, because even Pegasus will say he's apolitical, but he always uses right-leaning talking points to justify his positions and then religiously bashes the left ideologies. And that's fair enough, but you can't really say that you're apolitical and then have political stances. And I'm not talking about his opinions of the creators themselves, I'm talking about the ideology itself. But either way, I might not agree with everything that he says, I still appreciate that his existence is healthy and beneficial to a functioning online ecosystem. And yes, I do see the irony that there is a 100% of financial incentive for these slop YouTubers to do what they do. As Pegasus himself has pointed out, at this point he's paying for his great-great-great-grandkids to go to school. But if people are going to profit by exploiting our need for community and connection and, entertainment, then why shouldn't someone else profit by calling them out for being scummy? Just exploiting people being terrible people. At the end of the day, though, I would rather listen to a jester who thinks he's a fool, that I might not agree with him, than a king who thinks he's a god. Because at least they allow people to see things from a different perspective. But what do I know? I'm just a guy who spent the last year or years getting into the minds of villains.